Meanwhile, freedom under law's push to have Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe suspended continues. Hlophe has been involved in a bitter fight to retain his seat. He was found guilty of improper misconduct for attempting improperly to influence justices in the matters pending before the Constitutional Court. The Judicial Services Commission will meet tomorrow to consider the matter. So let's discuss this now with Justice Johann Kriegler from Freedom Under Law, who has made the submissions on the matter. Thank you so much, Justice, for your time this morning. I mean, this has been going on from, 2008 or so. And now, obviously, when it comes to that ruling, I think it was last year in August, regarding how it indeed was the gross misconduct under Section 177 of the Constitution for attempting to improperly influence Justices Nkambide as well as Jafta. This submission now has been made for the suspension, of course, of Justice John Hlophe. What do you make of what's to come following the actual seating?
Morning, Faith, and morning to the viewers. The suspension process is not predetermined. There's no particular procedure to be followed. The shortened Judicial Service Commission must deal with it tomorrow to decide whether to recommend to the President he be suspended. We say it's obvious he has to be. In the past, other judges who've been charged have been suspended even before any finding had been made against them by the JSC. In the case of Judge Hlophe, he has been found guilty of gross misconduct by the Judicial Service Commission. He is in charge. He runs the court. He decides who sits in which particular delicate cases. He decides to whom cases should not be allocated. He runs the High Court in the Western Cape. He sits at the nerve center, as we say, and we believe and strongly recommend to the Judicial Service Commission that this man should not remain in such a position of power with such a dark cloud hanging over his head.
But why is it done differently this time around? When you're looking at how before this, we had various findings, or before even a judge gets found guilty, then already the JSC will be taking action against that individual. But this time around, it seems as though there needs to be almost like a seating first, then he needed to be found, guilty of misconduct. And now, obviously, this term is actually dragging on for longer than what it naturally should. If indeed, as per the JSC, he's been found guilty, surely there should be just a follow-up step of you've been found guilty, this is a natural procedure to follow. But this time around, it seems as though it's taking longer than it should. Why do you think that is?
Faith, one must acknowledge Judge Hlophe is a very, very respected person in certain circles. He was, still is, the most senior black senior judge in the country. He is, and he carried the hopes of all of us who were working for transformation in the judiciary. And it's tragic that he failed. It's tragic that he, with that record ahead of him, to make a wonderful contribution to the transformation, saw fit to behave in such a grossly improper manner. He is still an icon, and it's difficult for people to separate the man's track record from his conduct.
Yeah,
what can I recognize?
Yeah, as you're speaking about this, because there have been various, analytical conversations regarding this matter, saying that it's almost as though it's seen as the purging of a black judge. And given the fact that he has the position of the highest seniority, he has the position of being, the highest senior black judge in that country, he gets removed. And the question is, where are the other representations of a dynamic, truly democratic South Africa? In that regard, I mean, how then do you start navigating a path like this, where some circles would actually see it as just a purging of black judges in this country?
It's got nothing to do with Judge Hlophe's color of his skin. The man behaved disgracefully. He is not fit to be a judge. Whether he was white or black or pink or green, he should not be sitting in judgment on his fellow South Africans. He should not be in a position where he can recommend to the minister who should be acting judges in his court. He is not fit to be able to say to the Judicial Service Commission, so-and-so is a good candidate for appointment to the bench in the Western Cape. He should be removed temporarily, at least at this stage, because we say if the principal of a nursery school has been charged with interfering with kiddies, nobody would object when you say, well, until we've finally decided he should be suspended. In this case, he's actually been convicted of misbehavior of the severest kind for a judge. To try to influence some other judge by talking to him outside court is grossly improper, and having done that, he should not be on the bench and not be in the position to do that kind of influencing of his juniors on the Western Cape bench.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the concern of a freedom under law regarding this matter. Is there a concern that whilst he continues with his duties, as he is continuing with his duties, that there could be a compromise of the justice system and also around the cases in which he presides over? Is there such a concern by freedom under law that whilst he's still on duty, there could be a compromise of certain cases?
Oh, certainly. Oh, certainly. We saw already in a very delicate case last year where a senior politician was charged with corruption. Judge Hlophe, who never sits in the criminal court, drew that criminal case for himself and then duly dismissed the case against the man at the end of the prosecution case, when there was certainly compelling evidence against the man, and on which one would have expected the court to say, well, let's hear what the accused has to say. His conduct of the case was most disturbing indeed. His behavior, according to his own deputy in judges' chambers, is most disturbing. His behavior on his own court bench is most disturbing, according to the affidavit of Judge Parker, who said that Judge Hlophe had come into his chambers and assaulted him there because of an allegation relating to Judge Hlophe's wife. This is not the kind of conduct that you want in judges' chambers. But quite apart from the actual real facts, the perception of you and I and the general public is that people who sit in judgment on the court bench should be above reproach. In the case of Judge Hlophe, sadly, that cannot be said.
Well, then, Judge Johann Kriegler, is then Judge Hlophe captured? And if captured, by whom?
Faith, the misdeed of Judge Hlophe is not irrelevant to that question. What Judge Hlophe did was he came from Cape Town to Braamfontein in Johannesburg on 2 occasions to talk to 2 judges of the Constitutional Court who were deciding a case which was highly relevant to the prosecution of Mr. Jacob Zuma. He said to one of the 2 judges he has a mandate to come there. He also told that judge that he has information from the State Security Agency. The suggestion that that is one of the earliest acts of state capture cannot be avoided. The significance of his conduct and his claim to a mandate and his knowledge of security matters does suggest that he indeed did not go there on a frolic of his own, but went there with a specific mandate to go and advance the cause of Mr. Zuma, who was at that stage out of office, but who was shortly afterwards voted into office as president of the ANC, and of course, which meant that he would be elected president of the country. It has a profound political tone to it, a label that you can hang on to it.
Before I let you go very quickly, is there confidence, though, that the JSC will indeed suspend Judge Hlophe upon the decision tomorrow?
Well, Faith, I do not want to speak on what they are going to do. That's for them to decide. What I can say is that the representations that we submitted, and the hope that they would look at them, make out a conclusive case that Judge John Hlophe should be suspended as soon as possible. And indeed, they should decide tomorrow to recommend to the President that Mr. Justice John Hlophe, Judge President of the Western Cape, be suspended pending the final outcome of the proceedings against him in Parliament.